Hi, Chris.
Hey, Mike.
Oh, this technology has given me a bunch of heartburn.
We'll be fine.
Just need to get undone.
I'm trying to decide if I want to go glasses or not. We could be glasses together.
Yeah, I used to just put these on for reading, and anymore.
I'm the same way. I went over your questions. I want to make sure on your first question with equity. We're like 10 to 12%, depending on what program. Is that what you're asking? So essentially, our skin in the game.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I meant was, how much does the borrower need to put in?
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Did you get here from the link that was saved in your calendar? Okay.
Yeah, with a little bit of, I tried to go in the back way, and in terms of just getting on the sessions, and I couldn't navigate to this page yet, because I would assume because the session hasn't started yet. And so, yeah, I actually went in and did your went over your tip sheet and scheduled it. And by scheduling it, I guess it recognized my name since I'd already registered as being a panelist and being able to come in and test it.
Are you seeing my screen being shared?
Yes.
Is that readable?
Yeah, I may not even have mine open the full amount. Let me see here. There we go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I didn't get much sleep last night. My middle son has got the stomach bug, so he was
Oh boy.
heading the toilet all night. So he's luckily upstairs sleeping now. I think he had a slight fever and it broke about 6 o'clock this morning. And he's been zonked ever since.
Oh boy. I'm sorry to hear that. How old?
He's 10. I hate to put blame on it, but their school Monday opened up completely. I mean, I love it. They're seeing kids' faces they haven't seen in 2 years. But what's up, Jerome?
I cannot hear anyone, but I see Chris and I see Mike. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Well, we don't have anything important to say anyhow, so.
Anyways, by them taking the masks off, I have a feeling that they got maybe opened up some other doors for other bugs to get in. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, I can hear you now.
You can hear us now.
Good.
Are we on yet?
No, we're not on yet.
I should try to share my screen just to make sure it's working. Have you tried that, Chris?
I'm not going to share anything. Mike shared a little bit though, and it worked.
Okay.
Yeah, if you can't get it to go, I can get it to go.
How you been, Jerome? Long time no see.
I know, right? Good, busy, just putting out, one fire or the other.
Yeah.
Never a dull moment here at the SBA. What's new at ECDI other than being the #1 micro lender in the country?
That's right. A lot of good things, man. We've got almost we're almost up to 80 employees. I came on, I think we had 60, and that was 4 months ago. We've added almost 20 people in 4 months. I mean, they're just growing like crazy.
Oh my God. I mean, Ina's at the helm. It's never going to be stagnant.
Right. That's right.
I see Glenda's joined us. Hi, Glenda. Looks
You're
like
on
you're
mute.
muted.
You're muted, Glenda.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Should be a microphone icon at the bottom.
She might not be able to hear us. We can't hear you, Glenda.
There's no way to unmute. We can't hear you. And I don't know if she's on her phone. I don't know if it looks the same as what we're looking at. You know, sometimes the mobile platform looks different.
Right. She's going to try again.
Well, obviously, this is a new platform, I think, for everybody. It is hard for me to tell for sure who may be tuning in at this point.
Well, it looks like up at the top, Mike, it says 3 of 10. So my assumption would be if you registered for this session, we're probably going, if barring Glenda registered, we're probably going to have 6.
Okay. Well, let's and I don't think participants, I don't think we're going to see their faces. So we should assume that we may have people tuned in, and we should go ahead and get started. And I believe Glenda will be hopefully joining us here a little bit later and be able to hear us. So why don't we go ahead and get going on the Access to Capital panel. And we've got 3 great presenters. And the first presenter is Chris Smalley, Director of Lending for Appalachia at ECDI. And Chris is not new to the entrepreneurial world. He grew up helping his parents with a retail store and remembers selling merchandise as early as 8 years old. He also has his own business in Southern Ohio, #1 Buckeye Lawn and Landscapes, where he has been running that business since 2010. Chris offers counseling and solution support to small business owners and provides resources on financing for all of Central Appalachia. Before coming to ECDI, Chris was a business development specialist at Ohio State University Centers in Piketon, and also served as a financial services officer at Farm Credit of Mid-America in Gallipolis. Chris, I'll turn it over to you to talk about ECDI and your programs, and then we'll have other panelists give a brief presentation, and then we'll get to Q&A.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Good intro there. That took a little bit off my page, but that's all right. I might elaborate on a couple of those things. First and foremost, as Mike mentioned, I am the new Director of Lending for ECDI, which is a nonprofit which was founded in 2004 to help small business entrepreneurs provide access to really resources that small businesses need to succeed. And my primary position, obviously, is the lending side, but ECDI as a whole does all kinds of cool things from our Women's Business Center that essentially helps businesses, walk you through leading up to needing lending and even after. and then we have several other arms of ECDI. But we help all entrepreneurs in all 88 counties, as well as getting the go-ahead a couple weeks ago, actually, to service this Appalachian market. Really, any county in West Virginia and Kentucky that touch the Ohio River, and I think a couple that are one county removed from the Ohio. So we're looking forward into moving into those markets as well that are kind of underserved and whatnot. But we focus on people who historically, like I just mentioned, are underserved and underbanked, and also industries that banks maybe consider more risky, such as your restaurant industries, your Main Street businesses, definitely startup businesses. Those are kind of our key folks that we want to assist. We don't consider ourselves competition to your traditional lenders. We consider ourselves, just another arm, another option for those folks out there that again maybe are at this time not able to utilize traditional financing. We offer small business loans up to $500,000. And we are, as Jerome mentioned earlier, we are now the newly crowned top SBA microlender in the nation, which is pretty cool. With the, coming out of the Ohio region, out of Columbus, Ohio is where our district office is. I wanted to kind of cover at some point in time our locations of our offices. Our main office is in Columbus, Ohio. We also reside out of Cleveland, Cincinnati, Akron, Toledo, Canton, and our newest office working with our Women's Business Center is in Portsmouth, Ohio, working out of the Shawnee State University Vern Rife Center. Hopefully by April, May timeframe, we'll be moving that office to the new Cricker Innovation Hub just on 23 in the center of Portsmouth, which will be fantastic because of just the different things that then we'll be able to offer to our clients. So what did I miss? I don't think I really missed anything. You covered my bio. Yeah, from age 8, I think you said, remember, ringing up customers in the retail store. My parents had a jewelry and Hallmark store. So a funny story, at age 8, I sold a diamond ring. So that was that was my first real sale. And the sky has been the limit since. So I've always enjoyed entrepreneurship. Like you mentioned, I had have my own business now. I'm kind of trying to phase it out a little bit now that I've come on with this position with with ECDI, but I have a small farm with our family, and it's always just been I guess it's in my fabric to always be doing something business oriented. So any way I can help on a personal level with folks that are wanting to get into business or grow their business here in Southern Ohio is really cool. So having this ECDI option for folks as another option is really good for our area, and I'm happy to be the leader of it here in Southern Ohio.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And in my rush to introduce Chris, I should have introduced myself. I'm Mike Jacoby, president of Ohio Southeast Economic Development. We serve 25 counties in Southern and Eastern Ohio as a nonprofit organization. We're the Jobs Ohio Network partner, and we are a subsidiary of the Appalachian Partnership, Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit that serves 32 counties in Appalachian, Ohio. And the CEO of the Appalachian Partnership, Inc., Glenda Bumgarner, will be one of our panelists here later. But now it is my pleasure to introduce Jerome Jones, And Jerome, you can pull up your screen, or if you want me to pull it up, I'm happy to do that.
I'm going to give it a shot. Let's see if it works here.
Okay. Well, Jerome is a lender relations specialist with the SBA, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Prior to joining the SBA, Jones was a certified business advisor with the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College and a managing member of the Dan Ash Group, LLC. He has also served as VP of Lending at the Economic and Community Development Institute, which I assume is ECDI, the Vice President of Business Services at Tel Ohio Credit Union, where he was responsible for the business loan department, Vice President of Community Development Lending at KeyBank, and Senior Loan Officer for the Community Development Corporation. Jones is also very active in the Central Ohio community, having served on the United Way of Central Ohio Finance Committee and the City of Columbus Loan Review Committee, as well as having served as a board member at the Columbus Urban League. Jones is a recipient of the SBA Financial Services Champion Award, the Frank W. Watson Associate Award, and a Certified Economic Development Finance Professional. It's a pleasure to have you, Jerome. I will turn it over to you.
All right. First, can you see my screen? Should be a big blue and white SBA logo. Could you see my screen?
Yeah, we could, but we can't now.
Okay, I didn't hear anything, so let's try it again, and I'm going to roll with it. So here we go. So I'm with the U.S. Small Business Administration now, came on December 10th of 2018, right before a big government shutdown and a pandemic. So let's hope that it gets better from here. Well, I can't get it to advance. Oh, I think I've discovered the problem. Here we go. So what does the SBA do? In an overview, we help small businesses access the right tools at the right time and build your business smarts and gain the confidence to move forward. And we do those three things primarily through our resource partners, SCORE, and the SBDC, and ECDI, which I'll touch on a little bit later. We're also your small business advocate, as the SBA administrator position, Isabel Guzman, it's a cabinet level position, so she reports directly to the president. Now, our three pillars, as we like to call it, are capital, contracting, and consulting. What we're most known for, obviously, is capital through the money that the SBA lend. And we don't do it directly, and I'll go over that shortly. Also, contracting, which is something we're not known for as much, but we have a very robust contracting program, which is called the SBA 8A, the number 8 and the letter A program, which helps small businesses access government contracts. And I can speak from firsthand knowledge that can be a very dramatic increase in revenue for companies. I've seen it firsthand. And consulting, the mentoring piece is done primarily through SCORE, and the free business consulting and low-cost training is done primarily through the small business development centers located throughout the state of Ohio. So SCORE used to stand for Service Corps of Retired Executives. They no longer go by that name, but they kept the acronym. And again, that is more mentorship. So they, based upon the need of the small business, they try to connect you with the SCORE representative that has an expertise in that area. So if the small business needs access to capital or help with financial projections or marketing or advertising, they try to connect you with the mentor that has expertise in that area. Now with the SBDC, it's more business consulting and training. Having worked at the SBDC for 4 years before coming over to the SBA, I can tell you that the training, the entrepreneurship training, is invaluable. I can't tell you the number of businesses that have used that training and can't say enough good things about it, and has helped their business get a firm foundation to start. The hardest thing in the world is starting a business. The second hardest thing in the world is keeping that business going. And the SBDC has almost all of their services are free, and what's not free is extremely affordable. So please take advantage of those services. And you can go to our website to access the SBDC nearest you, or you can Google SBDC or click the link. And the Women's Small Business Center. There's only one SBA Women's Small Business Center in Ohio, and it happens to be housed at ECDI, as Chris went over earlier. Again, the main office is 1655 Old Leonard Avenue in Columbus, but they have a southern chapter and I believe one in Cleveland as well. And I want to make sure that I mention the Procurement and Technical Assistance Centers. It's not federal, it's a state office, but they assist small businesses in obtaining government contracts on the state level, and with the 8A program. They work very closely with our business opportunities specialists, Jill Nagy-Reynolds and Shonda Harris, at making sure that a business is ready to apply for 8A approval. So the 8A program is something that you have to be approved for. There's a process, because once you get 8A certification, you have access to government contracts. So they make sure that the small business actually has the capacity to perform those contracts. So there's a process that you have to go through. Now I'm going to go through this very quickly because this is not my area of expertise, but it is Jill Nagy-Reynolds and Shonda Harris's area. It's determined by your size standards are determined by your NAICS code. That's your North American Industrial Classifications code, 6-digit code. If you don't know what yours is, just look at Google your industry and say restaurant NAICS code, and it will come up. It's a 6-digit code. Business types, who's eligible? Virtually any legal form. So proprietorship, partnership, corporation, LLC. But the business must operate primarily in the United States and be headquartered here. Now, size restrictions, average number of employees, but as a general rule, and there are certain NAICS codes that can go above this, but if the small business has 500 employees or less, it is generally qualified. And I don't know if many of us would consider 500 employees as a small business, but it does go that large. Non-qualified businesses, again, you can't operate outside of the U.S. You can't be headquartered outside of the U.S. And nonprofit businesses are not considered. So that goes for all of our programs. You must be a for-profit business. And so there are certain federal acquisition goals. So 5% of federal contracts go to women-owned businesses, 5% to small disadvantaged businesses, 3% to hub zone businesses. Historically underutilized business zones is what hub stands for. And 3% goes to service disabled veterans. Now to my area here. So for SBA programs, you can get as little as $500 through the SBA, all the way up to $5.5 million funding for your small business. Now the $500 is done primarily through ECDI, and being their VP of lending for about a year and a half, never done a $500 loan. I think the smallest I've done was $2,500, but you can get as little as $500 per SBA requirements. What can you use it for? Virtually any legal purpose. Working capital uses such as seasonal financing, export, lines of credit. You can refinance business debt. even if it were personal debt used for a business purpose under certain circumstances, because you really have to prove that that money was used exclusively for the business. You can also use it, obviously, for fixed assets, furniture, real estate, machinery, equipment, construction, and remodeling. Again, you must be a for-profit business, and the business must be headquartered and located in the United States or one of our territories. Guam and Puerto Rico would also qualify. Now, who's ineligible? You must be a for-profit. You cannot be a nonprofit business. Cannot be a passive holder of real estate. What that means, you can't use SBA money to buy a strip center that the business is not going to be located in. The business must occupy at least 51% of the property. Can't be owned by aliens, so you must be a citizen or be allowed to remain in the country legally for the term of the loan. Cannot be involved in gambling. You cannot restrict patronage. The only example that comes readily to mind was a fitness facility called Curves that only catered to female clients. That is no longer around, to my knowledge. You cannot promote religion. However, we can lend to a for-profit daycare that happens to be located in a church. Cannot be a consumer marketing co-op, so no pyramids. Cannot be of a prurient nature, so no adult bookstores or gentlemen's clubs, anything like that. Cannot be to someone of poor character. That is usually determined by a Form 1919 that you complete when you get your funding. And you cannot have a prior loss to the government. So if you've defaulted on a student loan or a prior SBA loan or any government loan. Now, you can, under certain circumstances, be delinquent on federal taxes, but have a payment plan that you have been paying on, preferably for 12 months, you may be eligible. Now, our programs, three primary programs: the 504 loan, the 7A loan guarantee program, and the microloan program. I'm going to go over those really quick here. So our standard 7A loan goes up to $5 million, and the small loan goes up to $350,000. Now, I want to point this out. The SBA doesn't lend money directly. We do it through our resource partners. The 7A is done through SBA approved lenders, so banks and credit unions and other SBA approved lenders. Now, the loan, the guarantee is 85% for loans up to $150,000 and 75% for loans over $150,000. Another very important point here, that guarantee is not actually on the loan. That guarantee is actually on the loss. And what I mean by that is, if the lender does a $150,000 loan, they are not going to do that loan without collateral. So we require them to do their lending like they would if there were no SBA guarantee. So they're going to get collateral. They're also going to get guarantees of all 20% or more owners. And that's a general banking rule as well as an SBA rule. So let's say 5 years into it, the loan goes bad. The lender is going to sell the collateral to get what they can. They're going to exercise their personal guarantees to get what they can from the owners. What they don't collect, they can bring back to the SBA. And if the original loan was $150,000 or less, we'll cut them a check for 85% of that loss. And if the original loan was over $150,000, we'll cut them a check for 75% of that loss. Now, the 504 program, this program is used primarily for real estate. It can be used for equipment. However, that equipment has to have a useful life of at least 10 years, and there's not much in the way of equipment anymore that has a useful life for 10 years. Maybe a CNC machine or metal stamping machine, something like that. And the reason for that is the SBA 504 program only comes in three flavors: a 10-year, a 20-year, and a 25-year. Those are all fixed rates for that period of time as well. It's a participation loan, meaning the lender, and in this case, it doesn't have to be an SBA approved lender, any lender, does 50% of the loan, the borrower puts in 10%, and the CDC on behalf of the SBA does 40%. The most recent rates that I saw for that 40% 25-year was fixed at just over 3.2%, that's an outstanding rate for commercial real estate, let alone being fixed for 25 years. There are a few circumstances where that 10% goes up and the 40% goes down. I'll go over that right now. So the typical structure is a 50-40-10. Now, if the property being financed is considered a single use or special purpose per the appraiser, think hotels, think car washes, some restaurants, something that cannot easily be converted to a regular commercial space, it would require an additional 5% equity injection from the borrower, and the SBA's piece goes down. If it's a startup, and a startup by SBA standards is any business that's less than 2 years old. Keep in mind, if you purchase a business, no matter how long the business was around, if there's a change in ownership and management, that's considered a startup again. So that would require an additional 5% down. If it happens to be both of those things, it's 20% down. And the microloan program, which Chris went over. Now, the SBA's portion of a microloan can't exceed $50,000. However, ECDI, being the behemoth that they are, they can go higher than 50,000 because they have many different pools of funds to pull from to help the small business. Interest rates are negotiated by ECDI. I believe right now they're right around 10%. The term cannot exceed 5 years, and you can't use it for real estate. So you can use it for working capital and equipment and things, but it cannot be used for real estate. And you really don't want to use a 5-year loan for real estate. It's not a very good match of the financing for real estate. That's my presentation, and I'm a lead lender relations specialist at the SBA. Dave Townsend is my counterpart and lead lender relations specialist, and that's our contact information. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jerome. So new platform, struggles to find the mute and unmute button, but thank you for that. We lost Glenda Bumgarner. I think she's going to try to log back in. I would ask participants to use the chat function to ask questions, and we'll maybe go to a few questions as we wait for our third panelist to join. So gentlemen, maybe let's start with, obviously you're dealing with a lot of small businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs. What do you find are some of the most common challenges that these individuals are running into, and how do you try to help them through that?
When I was with the SBDC, our biggest thing with startup businesses was collateral and lack thereof, skin in the game. You know, the equity that they have, the equity injection that they have to put towards the project. You know, a lot of people, you know, maybe I don't really have an example of an industry, but maybe worked in an industry for some time and decided, you know what, I'm tired of, you know, working for the man. I want to start my own thing, and you know, they've got the drive to do it. Do they have the, you know, what we kind of call the 3 M's, the money, marketing, and management piece, or did they just understand the management side because they've always done whatever they're wanting to continue doing? Did they understand the back end side of it, of taxes and employees and marketing and sales and all of that? So that's sometimes a piece. And obviously, you know, Jerome did a very, very nice presentation on kind of the resources out there, including the SBDC and SCORE and ECDI, that can assist with that startup phase and helping them understand and you know, what it does take to actually run a business. But probably for me, probably the biggest thing was always collateral and lack thereof, and that skin in the game piece, and that continues to be the case with ECDI. The nice thing is we're maybe a bit more forgiving than your traditional lending institutions in terms of that, and I think we're going to get into that in some of the questions here later. So I won't share that too quickly, but there's some options out there, and I think that's the most attractive thing about where I now work, and folks can still make things happen and not be stopped in their tracks whenever they find that, well, I don't have 20% to put down or whatever. So
I'm going to piggyback on what Chris said, and I'll point this out. I would run into this when I taught the entrepreneur class at SBDC. Foodies in particular are a challenge. First of all, lenders don't like restaurants in the first place. That's probably the last thing on their list that they want to do. And most foodies are really into their food. Their drug of choice is giving you whatever their main dish is and seeing that smile on your face, irregardless of the cost. And when you're running a restaurant, that's the exact opposite. When I was a lender, it was easier for me to lend to a businessman who knew nothing about cooking for a restaurant than someone who made the best whatever, fill in the blank, but knew nothing about running a business. Because that's what kills a restaurant, is the ability to actually run a business. And I believe I'm allowed to make this recommendation. There's a book called The E-Myth, and there's a story of Sarah, who started, she started cooking when she was 3, making pies. Her aunt taught her how to make pies. She loved pies. She made pies for every potluck. She started a little side hustle of making pies, and she hated her job, and her employees and friends talked her into quitting her business and going into the pie making business. So she cashed in her 401k, she rented a space, nice cabinets, and started making pies for a living, and discovered that she hated making pies for a living. There's a totally different thing from a side hustle and doing it for a living. And there's nothing wrong with the side hustle. No shame in that at all. If you could do something to bring in extra money, by golly, take advantage of it. But it's very different from doing it for a living and doing it as a business. So if I can make a plug for a book, The E-Myth is an outstanding read for prospective entrepreneurs, because you need to know what you're getting yourself into. It takes passion, to Chris's point, but it takes a lot more than that as well.
Very good points, gentlemen. I guess one of the things that I have run into before is you have passionate entrepreneurs approaching you. They've got this great product or service, and they want to get started right away with a business, and they approach a lender, and they start talking about this great product or service, and they frequently they don't have a business plan, and it's as great as their product or their service is, they're kind of unless they've got a lot of collateral, and sometimes even if you don't have a lot of collateral or a lot of equity, you just reach kind of a dead end. Can you talk a little bit about the role of a business plan and how entrepreneurs can get help in getting a business plan completed?
Let me give this one a first step, Chris. So in banking, when I sat at that desk and someone brought a 500-page business plan, I already knew it was bad. It doesn't take 500 pages to explain the business. And as a lender, you go directly to the financial projections. Because if it doesn't make sense financially, there's no sense in reading the marketing piece or any of the other pieces or the experience or expertise. That's the hardest point when I was at the SBDC with business plans. And since my background was banking, whenever that came up, it would always be directed to me. And you really have to delve into, and there's so many resources that can help with a business plan, and there's software that's great with a business plan. but it has to make financial sense. And one of the things I would see that they would cut out most is that, well, I'm not going to pay myself because I'm going to devote all of my money and put it back into the business. Well, that's not a realistic business plan. I don't want to buy a business where I can't pay myself for all of my hard work. So that's not very realistic. Secondly, do you really know the cost of your product or service? What is your cost of goods sold? Those two things were what was missing most of the time. And do you have an amount set aside for the marketing? And is that a realistic number? So a realistic business plan is one of the weakest links for a startup because they're so passionate about what they do. They don't look at the cost of things and how much, what the realistic financial success of a business looks like. And SBDC score, there are a number of resources, small business plans or planning software that can assist with that.
Chris,
And I was just gonna say I'll follow with, we SBDC score. ECDI does a maybe a bit more hand holding. That's kind of what the Women's Business Center is built for. But we want you to attempt that business plan. It's your business. So, we don't write it for you. We assist you, but we don't, I mean, again, I was with the SBDC for almost 13 years and it was almost like they thought a business plan was a grant writing. Hey, can you write this for me? No, that's not what we're here for. Do you agree, Jerome?
100%, Chris. 100%.
So it's very important that you play a major role in that business planning process, and it's a very good activity. It doesn't mean that year 2 that you have to be following it, but it puts a plan out. It makes you think about everything with business. And more times than not, I would have a client that would be like, man, I've never even thought about that. Or I don't know how that works. And so you help them, you work through that piece. And like I mentioned before, the 3 M's, normally a business owner is obviously good at 1 or they wouldn't want to do it. Maybe good at 2, but probably not good at all 3. So me, myself, I can give an example. When I started my business, even though I'm a former lender, now I'm back into lending, I don't like the money side of it. I don't like sending out bills and collecting and doing all that. So I got somebody to do that for me. And that is a very important piece. I like the marketing piece. I like doing the work, and so you got to find how you fit in that business, and the business plan really helps you to accomplish that.
And the other thing a business plan does, it's not uncommon for a small business, once I start working with them on their business plan, realizing that, I'm not going to be rich next year. I don't know if this is what I want to do. I'm leaving a job where I've got vacation and I've got insurance. So, again, it's a reality check for a lot of prospective entrepreneurs.
Yeah, very, very true. So another, I will say that we have had questions about whether or not this session and the slides will be available later. I know the session is being recorded, so I'm sure there are ways that this can and will be shared. I just don't have the answers to exactly how that's going to be done just yet, but I'm sure there will be a way to share this. And I think I assume, Jerome, if we wanted to create a PDF of your presentation, I'm sure we could email that to anybody who wanted the slides alone.
Correct.
So another question, and I know Glenda's popped in and out. We've still got time, and we're hopeful that we can get her to present as well. But You often have small business owners and entrepreneurs, very independent, and they are often reluctant to seek other people's money. And so they don't want to take on debt. And oftentimes they basically spend all of their own money first, and then they go to a lender and approach a lender to try to borrow money after they've run out of all of their own money. Can you two talk about what may make a little more sense? Do you understand where I'm going with that? And
Absolutely.
okay, yeah. So basically, equity requirements and managing cash flow and those types of things.
Yeah. Now, first of all, lenders don't like 100% financing. They want you to have some skin in the game. Now, there are certain times when the money that you've invested in your business can be counted as equity. So don't discount that, but keep in mind that, A, track every penny that you put into your business. And B, some lenders might look at it as, okay, that's your business. You're supposed to have invested your money in that business. So, having net worth in your business is a requirement. But to your point is, keep in mind, most lenders are going to want at least 10% down, particularly if you're buying something. If you're looking for working capital, maybe not every time, but if you're buying a piece of equipment, typically they want you to have some equity injection, typically 10%. Real estate, 10%. So just make sure that you have available capital. And it's not, when going back briefly to business plans, I don't want to see that you're going to quit your job and take every penny of your life savings and put it in a business. I know a lot of people think that, well, that shows my dedication. No, that shows that you really haven't thought about things, because you have bills and creditors and they want to get paid. They don't share your entrepreneurial passion. They just want to get paid. Make sure you have a way to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how. I mean, you hit it on the head there, Jerome. I could give an example of a client I had when I was with the SBDC that, Mike, I think you mentioned this. They kind of liquidated their savings, and he actually liquidated his 401k or retirement to the point of, I think, $40,000 or something, and ended up, we were able to figure out a lending option for him, but it would have been a lot better to maybe borrow against that and leave that in the, in 401k, retirement, churning and burning. But it worked out, and but again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. But absolutely, I guess what I would take from how you kind of started that, Mike, is have a conversation with the entities that we've talked about today that do this on a daily. We don't cost anything. Have a conversation with us. Even go talk to your accountant. I mean, we always at the SBDC, we always told people, like, look, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. Go have a conversation with them as well, just to make sure that we're not missing something and we're not legally tied to anything or whatever. You want to do your homework before you make a life-changing decision.
Thank you for that. And what I often kind of heard was that, knowing that at the point you go to the bank, they're probably not going to give you 100% of what you're trying to finance. If you don't have some of your own cash to count as equity, you're kind of out of luck. So you want to, and you have to manage the working capital. So it takes cash to run these businesses, and you don't want to be over leveraged with debt, but sometimes debt is a good thing because it just helps you manage that cash flow. So we've got a question about from Cynthia Brown. Will you be talking about capital for construction? So I assume financing construction. I know that's probably right up the, or at least financing real estate may be a good fit for 504. But in my experience, there's difference between long-term financing for real estate and a construction loan. So maybe that's where Cynthia is wanting to go with that.
Well, and so if you're talking about that, the SBA said actually both programs can be used, 504 and 7A, if you're going to construct real estate. Now, keep in mind, the lender is going to, when I say lender, the bank or credit union is going to foot the bill for the construction. They'll do some interim notes until the building is complete. And at that point, it will convert to the permanent financing that has been arranged prior to approval of the loan. So can you use SBA money for construction? Absolutely.
Okay. And I see, is there a capital for construction program? I think that's the specific question.
So there's a capital for construction program on ECDI, but it's a little different. And so I want to mention it because if that's what you're alluding to, it's a great program, and we've kind of reconfigured it in Appalachia from kind of its use in more of the urban areas. But essentially, what it's for is, let me give an example of a general contractor gets a bid on a project, and he has subs that work under him. So let's say he's got an electrician or a plumber that come in and are going to do a portion of that job. The Capital for Construction program through ECDI is built for those subs, for those guys that are up and coming, that they're trying to grow their business, and maybe they've got to buy product or they've got to pay their employees, and maybe it's a multi-month long project that they don't maybe get paid until obviously there's X number of draws through a construction project. Maybe they don't get paid until when their piece of the project is complete. And so our Capital for Construction program is built where we can fund that up front with a signed contract from that general saying, yes, XYZ company is working for me. We've signed a contract that they're going to be making this much money on the job. We have to have documentation of that, but it's a pretty cool program because it's no interest. It's a fee-based loan for that contractor, and it's money pretty quickly. So Jerome might be, again, I'm 4 months in. Jerome might be able to tie onto that a little bit more than I, because he's seen them. I haven't seen one personally yet, but it's a hot topic with us on again, that contractor that's trying to grow, but maybe just doesn't have that capital to keep his guys up and going through the project.
Yeah, I do know Lonnie Miles and I believe Dan Moncrief helped put that program together here locally in Columbus. I don't have any experience with someone who's actually gone through that yet. I do know that for contractors in particular, bidding contracts, and I don't know if ECDI has a class on that. I know there are organizations that do help with bidding. That's the hardest part. I've dealt with businesses over many, many years. Some of them I've known for 20 years, and they're still in the same place that they were 20 years ago because of bidding contracts correctly, so they can have capacity to grow. That is also where the 8A program can come into play. So if you can get in that program, I can give one quick example of a business that I met. I think I met him in 2014. He'd been in the program for about 5 or 6 years. Now, the program only lasts for 9 years. You graduate out of the program at 9 years, whether you've grown or not. So it's up to you to take advantage of it. But he was doing less than $1 million when I met him. When he graduated, the business was doing $12 million in revenue, just by getting government contracts, mentoring with a business that could help him grow. But again, you have to put the effort into that as well. I think I answered the question.
And reading back through, it looks like Cynthia is the sub, and so maybe hopefully Cynthia, I answered your question. Looks like Mike was one ahead of me and put my contact info in there. Reach out to me after the call. I've got 2 hours open. I'd be happy to talk to you. or anytime for that matter.
Fantastic. So that sounds kind of like what I guess I'd call like kind of a line of credit program, where if you know you've got some revenue that's going to be coming in, but you need to finance inventory or construction materials or something like that to get the job done before you get paid. Sounds like kind of a version of a line of credit.
Yeah, we essentially call it working capital because that line of credit terminology at ECDI doesn't jive for whatever reason. But hopefully that product will come back someday. Line of credit essentially is you've got a pot of money and you might use a portion of it and you're only charged on that portion, where working capital is you use the whole pot and you're charged on the whole pot. Okay. We just don't have the back end management to utilize that operating line of credit yet. But hopefully, like I say, that will come, because that, from my previous lending experience with Farm Credit of Mid-America, that was a major product of ours in the agricultural sector of an operating loan and using it, reusing it, so on and so forth. So
great. All right. Well, unfortunately, I did hear from Dr. Glenda Baumgartner, who's the CEO of the Appalachian Partnership, Inc., which is the parent also of Appalachian Growth Capital. She's busy today. She was trying to connect in a car from her phone. It's just not the mute. She can't get off mute. So I'm just going to try to represent Appalachian Growth Capital as best I can. Appalachian Growth Capital is also a nonprofit. They are a federally certified community development financial institution. They also specialize in loans to small businesses. They are filling the gap between what the bank will loan and what is really needed for that business to grow. They can do fixed assets. They can do working capital. I put in the chat function the contact to pursue a loan through Appalachian Growth Capital. A lot of these programs, they're really targeted for companies or small businesses, entrepreneurs who may really be struggling to get a bank loan. So it is flexible money. Now, when there's higher risk, sometimes you're paying a little bit higher rate, but they can take a second lien or mortgage position subordinate to the bank. So the banks actually really like these types of programs because it can fill a gap and it can reduce a risk for the lender. And I know Appalachian Growth Capital has been real flexible on loan repayments as things come up. So one more option to look into if you're a small business out there. Gentlemen, I thought I would get into a question, probably your most common question. What kind of interest rates are you seeing out there for your products?
So I'll go first, Jerome, because I know yours kind of play off of ours. We don't have commercial lending doesn't really have a rate sheet like you might have if you go buy a car or buy a house or what have you. But I can tell you this, Mike, perfect segue on, maybe higher risk. So maybe higher rate number than what you're used to hearing. I'll be honest, guys, when I got there and they started saying, yeah, I mean, we're able to do loans in the 5s, 6s, even 7s. I'm like, that's pretty good. Historically speaking. I mean, that's for a commercial loan. That's pretty competitive. Now we have our range. They say 5 to 9.25. We've got essentially 3 main programs. We've got a scored loan program, which is going to actually be changing a little bit, where it's anything under 50, and you've got to be in business. You obviously got to have some history, and it's impacted kind of off your credit score. That'll be a tiered approach, and the idea of that is tigers don't change their stripes. Let's make good loans to good people, and then maybe take something to people that have maybe had some adverse credit issues in the past. We'll take them to more of the community advantage side, where our underwriters get in and start looking and seeing how we can help and be of assistance. But those are more of a 9.25 option and right around that number. And that's because there's that SBA guarantee option that we're 6% above prime. So yeah, 5 to 9.25. And like I say, our average is right around 6.25 right now. So pretty darn good.
And for us, again, since the SBA doesn't lend any money directly, it is left to the lender within certain parameters. So prime right now is 3.25. So it's something over and above prime, probably prime plus 2, 3. Once, and if you're looking at a conventional lender, they don't price it like ECDI does from a risk standpoint. If they deem it's too risky, there's no rate that they're going to accept. They're not going to do a 10% loan. They'll just say no.
Right.
But that's the gap that ECDI fills. So the way I describe ECDI when I'm talking to someone who calls in, we lend money to ECDI to turn around and lend to small businesses that don't fit into a bank's risk profile. It could be that it's a startup. It could be that it's a restaurant. It could be that it's a rolling stock. Banks generally don't want to lend on a used semi, but ECDI does. I mean, that's a great part of their portfolio and a great performing part of their portfolio. They've got an expertise in that area. So typically that's where interest rates fall for SBA lending. Again, the 504 piece has the outstanding fixed rate for the real estate.
And how we can do those, well, like I said, kind of circle back, how we can do those rates is we might have 60 or more different funding sources or pots of money to choose from at different values. And that's the back end that our clients don't even know about. So once your loan is approved, then it goes to those powers that be, and you might have 10 different funding sources that your loan is funded by. And we have what's called a blended rate option. And so you might have X number of dollars at a 12% rate, but the other portion of money or another portion of money at 2%. And so it averages out to eventually get you down to that manageable 6.25%. That's all you got to worry about. That's what I pay. So it's really cool how the folks that are a lot smarter than me on the backside can do that. So kudos to Tim. I'll throw Tim a Jerome knows who I mean.
Yeah. In my experience, the secret to a good career is to work with people a lot smarter than me.
That's right.
So we have a question. What about funding for tech companies? Deborah Davis asks this. And I would assume one of the things factoring into that is you may not be financing an asset that has some type of collateral value. There's probably a lot of kind of intellectual property, which I know can be hard to place a value on.
So, I mean, can you use SBA money for that? I mean, if it's a legal lending purpose, sure. Now that's going to be left up to the lender. Again, that's going to fall into the 7A world. So you're going to typically be looking at business valuations that come up with a value for that asset. To your point, though, Mike, it's not the easiest thing because it's hard to go and collect on intellectual property. But it is a legal issue. What I run into when businesses call me that have intellectual property and want a loan, it has to have an existing market. They have to be selling it and collecting on it. So you can't use money for speculative or research and development purposes for the SBA because your loan is due 30 days from the time you close that loan. And you can't use the loan to pay the loan. So they're going to look at the cash flow they're generating to repay that loan. So keep that in mind. If you're selling something that you have created, you have to have a market. Before that, you're looking at angel or investor money or patient capital. Someone who doesn't need money in 30 or 45 days. Think Shark Tank. Those are angel investors. They know they're not going to get paid in 30 days. They give you money for the potential that they see in what you're selling. So with tech, it's a little tricky. It's not that it's not allowable for SBA. Just keep in mind that there are some caveats that go along with that.
We're definitely willing to look at it. I'm actually currently working on one, a tech company. Has several major. I'm just reading her comment. I will say this, Deborah. I don't know where this company might be, but I want to mention at some point in time, and now seems like a good one, a question coming from you, Deborah, that my counterpart of kind of the western side of Appalachia is Aaron Cornell. He is the director of lending for the greater Cincinnati. And so, again, the easiest way to contact any of us is through our website and throw out a request. But his information, Mike, do you have that as well? Or I could probably...
I can probably find it.
His email would be Cornell with 2 L's at ecdi.org, just like mine, but Cornell at ecdi.org. So thanks, Deborah. So either of us, in terms of Appalachian coverage, would be a good place to start. And I tell people we're willing to look at anything and everything. And then if we can't do it, we'll try to help you find someone that can.
And I'll throw out a Jobs Ohio program, and I don't know how many people are familiar with Jobs Ohio, but it's the statewide economic development organization. It's a private nonprofit, and they don't help every type of business, but they focus on the sectors that really are generating new wealth in the economy. So a lot of technology companies fit within their targeted sectors. Jobs Ohio isn't going to help a restaurant or a local service company. But when you're creating an intellectual product and you're selling it far beyond Ohio borders, that may be a company that qualifies for Jobs Ohio assistance. And Jobs Ohio cannot fund a startup company. But if it's a company that has been in operation over a year, and they've got at least $100,000 of sales, Jobs Ohio does have an inclusion grant. The inclusion grant is designed to help a company grow, either develop a new product, get into a new market, buy new equipment, and create jobs. Ultimately, they're driven by, job creation. The inclusion grant is different because it focuses on small businesses, and it also focuses on historically disadvantaged businesses. So minority-owned businesses, female-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, and owners that may be disabled. It also looks at geographic areas that are historically distressed. So a lot of Appalachia qualifies. I would assume a lot of neighborhoods in Cincinnati qualify. And then again, if you're a disadvantaged owner, you can qualify for these businesses. I'm about to click a link in the chat if you want to look at that program. But fairly new program at Jobs Ohio. There really aren't. Everybody asks for a grant, and there's really very, very few of them, especially to start a business. But if you've got a tech company that you need some funding to develop a new product, this could be a good fit for you. And while I'm putting the Jobs Ohio link in there, if you're in the Cincinnati area, you would work through Ready Cincinnati. If you're in Southeast Ohio, Southern Ohio, you'd work through our organization, Ohio Southeast Economic Development, and I'll put my information in there as well. Okay, I'm pleased to report we seem to be adding participants as the session goes on, not losing them. So you guys are doing great. You guys are doing a great job.
We need to start over, Jerome.
So let's talk about collateral requirements. I at one point in my life, passed the Certified Economic Development Finance Professional Test by the skin of my teeth, and I vaguely remember a loan to value ratio. Can you guys talk about collateral requirements?
So what they would like is at least a 1-to-1, meaning you have $1 or you have some collateral that covers the loan. So if you want $100,000, you have something of value that's at least $100,000. That makes a lender comfortable. Anything over and above that, even more so. Now, I want to throw in one caveat. With the SBA 7A program in particular, that guarantee program, we don't want a lender to decline a loan merely because it's a little light in collateral. That does not mean no collateral. But if everything else, and I look at it as legs on a stool, if you have 4 legs on the stool and one of them is a little weak, you're probably safe to sit on it. But if more than one is weak, you probably won't. So if collateral is a little light, but credit scores are strong, cash flow, number one, is strong, management experience is strong, the collateral is a little light, 7A is a perfect use for that program. We encourage lenders to use the 7A program if that is the only thing that's a little light. They do require the lender to get all available business collateral. If that doesn't get them where they need to be, if there is something, for instance, a personal residence that has a large amount of equity in that may be required. But if it's a minimal amount of equity, for instance, if you just bought a home, you probably don't have much equity in that home. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense at that point. So that may not be required. But we do require the business or the lender to get all available collateral, definitely all business collateral.
ECDI is ditto to that. I mean, theoretically, we don't really have a collateral requirement. As again, some banks do, like you started there, Mike, you'd like to have a loan to value of what have you, but we are going to get as close to that 1-to-1 ratio as we can. And that might mean, just like Jerome said, that may mean, especially if it's a startup and you don't have many business assets, a second lien mortgage, on your primary residence. So statistically, it shows, we were always told people aren't going to walk away from their home. So they're going to try to make it work if they can. So you've got to be protected in that way.
And so something that I know I've run into before, a small business owner may be buying a piece of equipment that's worth $100,000, but it's a specialized piece of equipment. It depreciates quickly. It's kind of hard to resell it for what you paid for it. So just say a little bit about how a lender is going to look at the collateral value of equipment.
If you're buying new equipment, you're going to get credit for 100% of that cost. So if you're paying $100,000 for it, you're going to get credit for $100,000. Where you run into issues is if it's used equipment, it's going to be devalued at some point. Typically as a lender, if I looked at used equipment, maybe 50% loan to value. But if it's brand new, you're going to get credit for what you're paying for it.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Deborah. Are there any financial institutions that provide financing to scalable, non-labor intensive companies?
I need an example.
Yeah. To scalable, non-labor intensive companies.
Well, while we're
tech. I don't know of any that, that's their specialty. Again, a lender is going to look at it, can we get repaid? And if we can't get repaid, do we have a secondary source to get repaid, i.e. collateral or personal assets or outside income from the business owners? Sometimes a business owner has tremendous if it's a surgeon, they have great outside income. A surgeon may make $350,000 a year. Well, that'll come into play in what's called a global cash flow, looking at the excess income from the owner. But again, I don't know of any lenders that is their focus is tech. Again, your typical bank or credit union cannot get repaid. Number one.
Chris, anything to add to that?
No, Jerome and I are on the same page for sure. And again, an example of the tech company would be good, but contracts, when how soon are they going to, have some cash flow? A lot of those things come into play with maybe what Deborah's asking for us. So, again, maybe I'll call Deborah and try to get some more information of where this is located and who it might be.
Yeah, I'll just add from an economic development standpoint, a lot of times tech companies can be hard to finance because you're not financing assets. It may be a brand new idea. There may be no comparable model out there for the lender to get comfortable with. At the same time, there can be tremendous growth opportunity for these tech companies. So sometimes that's a good fit for kind of a angel investor scenario. Typically, patient capital that's taken an equity and ownership stake. And typically there are tech angel programs, at least in metro areas. You may want to take a look at that. Understand there's a risk and reward correlation. More risk an investor or a lender is taking, the higher return on investment they expect to receive. Go ahead.
Excuse me, Mike. What Deborah mentioned, her last comment, we need to probably create a way to fill this niche. So mezzanine financing is what is the vehicle that is supposed to bridge the gap, or mezzanine, between angel investors and conventional financing. So mezzanine financing, typically they do take some percentage of ownership, maybe a little less than an angel would. They do have an interest rate, but they want to get repaid, and it's a short-term bridge or mezzanine between the two. We used to have one in Columbus called the Columbus Growth Fund. That's no longer. It's been gone for a number of years now. But what you're asking for does exist. It's called mezzanine financing. I just don't know of anyone who is doing that right offhand.
I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask is about how long does it take to get a loan approved?
Chris, you go first on that one, man.
Yeah, I know you guys are a little bit longer, right? So, like I said, we kind of have three main types that we go. Scored are going to be the fastest. Those are 50,000 and less, and those are ranging around 30 days for us. Microloans, 45 to 50 days. Like we talked about before, microloans can go above that 50 mark with our other funding sources that we can put into that. And then our big one, our CA loans, our community advantage loans that we get the SBA backing. Honestly, waiting on documentation from clients, waiting on the front end. And it's not always the clients, but sometimes, we'll get a what we think is a full loan package. We'll send it to processing. Processing will put the package together, send it to underwriting. Underwriting will come back to us with an approval per conditions. So we then have to go back to the client and get those conditions before they can send it to SBA for their graces. So there's a lot of hoops, but quite honestly, we're ranging anywhere from 60 to 90 on those. So still, historically pretty good. I mean, you go to a traditional lending institution, that's what an SBA loan's going to take.
Chris, I should record that from now on. Everybody ask that question, I just hit play. So now I will say this. There are certain lenders, pretty much every large bank and a lot of your community banks and credit unions have what's called PLP certification, so preferred lender. So they can approve SBA loans without our prior approval. If not, they can send it to the SBA and then it goes through that process. But to Chris's point, when I'm dealing with a borrower, again, putting on my banker hat, in a borrower's mind, the clock starts ticking once they submit the package. To a lender, the clock starts ticking once they receive a complete package.
Correct.
Two totally different things.
Yeah.
And to Chris's earlier point, a complete package might present other questions that the SBA or that the underwriter may have. Okay, well, what about this? Which then the lender has to go back to the borrower and get that additional information or documentation, which again, that's all part of this approval process. So a complete package on something simple, a piece of equipment or a piece of real estate, that's going to move a lot faster. There's not as many moving parts. But if you want $250,000 in working capital, that may take a little more and present some more questions. So it all depends on what you're financing and the complexity of the request.
Yeah, if it's a business acquisition or you're purchasing real estate or what have you, those may take a little bit more time, just depending on how multiple owners. I mean, there's just all kinds of things that come into play.
I know we've been involved in projects recently where, we've got a business ready to go on a project, and one of the things required is an appraisal. Well, appraisers are really busy right now. So there can be, even if it takes 30 days to get an approval, that's, as you said, the clock starts at the point all the documents are in place. And so that's something that small businesses and entrepreneurs need to account for when they're planning to borrow funds. But gentlemen, this is a good segue. What kinds of documents should a borrower expect to provide in order to get an approval?
Want me to take it?
You can have first stab at that one, Chris.
All right. So this is, pretty much across the board. So let's just say it's startup business. 2 most recent pay stubs, 3-year personal tax returns, personal financial statement for husband and wife. And then if you're in business and you're seeking additional capital, we would need the last 90 days financial statements, including the P&Ls, balance sheets, accounts payables and receivables, and then 3 years taxes for the business. That's the initial stuff. Like we talked before, there might be other things that an underwriter wants to see. I had a conversation with an entity yesterday that wanted to see 5 years, just because they wanted to kind of get an even bigger picture of this business that they were looking to go in. It was going to be a potential loan that we were going to go in with them on. So, but that's what you should expect.
Again, everything Chris said. Now, the personal financial statement that he mentioned for SBA, that's for all 20% or more owners. So if it's just you, then that's all. But if there are more owners, they're going to need that for every owner. Also, the SBA is going to require financial statements that are not more than 90 days old. So if it's February and you have tax returns, you're okay there. But if it's March, yeah, they're going to need a tax return, but they're also going to need a financial statement, a balance sheet and profit and loss that's not more than 90 days old.
Right.
And some of you may be sitting there thinking, well, I don't have a personal financial statement. You can provide templates so that they could fill that out.
You can Google SBA personal financial statement. It'll come right up.
Okay.
Yeah, in
All
our
right.
loan package, Mike, we send them actually the SBA 4, I think is what it's called, Form 4. So yeah, we send them everything they are going to need, including the thing I start with, and all of our RMs start with as a loan documentation checklist, and it's essentially 2 pages with check marks on them of, here's what we need. So
Great.
And
Okay.
please wait and submit everything. Don't piecemeal it. So it's so, and then we got to go back and try to find it and make sure that it, just wait until you have everything and send one complete package. I can tell you from the standpoint of a loan officer and an underwriter, it makes everyone's life a lot easier, and we don't have to worry about that clock start ticking at 2 different time frames.
Right.
Great. So we've got a couple of questions in chat. First one, are there any specific industries that lenders will not typically lend to? And then the second question, should applicants start with the SBA or go directly to the lender and request an SBA loan?
Those are all you, Jerome.
Yeah, since the lender's lending the money, I would definitely start with the lender. And I would start with who you currently bank with, because they have some kind of a relationship with you. So definitely start with them. What was the first part of that question again? So I want to make sure I touch on that.
What industries are not eligible?
Industries, yeah. So, okay, I can tell you, lenders don't like hotels, because a hotel can only be a hotel. So you've got that single-use special purpose facility. They typically require a greater down payment. So I have never seen a hotel done with less than 20%. Typically, it's at least 20% equity injection. They want to see borrowers that have some financial capacity over and above that. So they don't want you to take every dime you have to come up with the 20%. Lenders aren't crazy about restaurants, particularly non-franchise restaurants, because the failure rate is so extremely high. One of the highest in any industry are restaurants. And you can tell that yourself by driving by. You see a restaurant, and before you can get there to try out the food, it's already gone. So typically, those are 2 industries that lenders are not falling all over themselves to lend to.
And there were certain types of businesses that were ineligible just based upon SBA rules. I'm trying to remember what you called them, but it was. Can you mind hitting those again?
So sure. So let me pull it up again. So the ineligible businesses are. Get to that screen real quick so I make sure I hit them all. Obviously, you have to be a for-profit. You can't be a passive holder of real estate. I get one of these calls, 1 or 2 a week, someone who wants to buy a strip center and just rent the entire thing out. No, that's speculative. So if you were going to buy a building and you occupy 51%, at least 51% of that building, that is eligible. Cannot be owned by aliens. You cannot be involved in gambling. So we cannot lend to casinos. You cannot be, so if you're an adult bookstore or a gentleman's club, those are not eligible. Another one that comes up often, especially now, are anything dealing with cannabis. So the Department of Agriculture does allow for financing to hemp-based businesses. However, the burden of that falls on the lender. So it has to have, the amount of THC has to be below a certain level, and the burden falls on the lender and the business to prove that. And frankly, because of that, I don't know of any lender personally that will do hemp-based businesses, because they just don't want the liability. It is allowable per the Department of Agriculture for us to lend on, but we're not lending the money directly. So you have to find a lender that is comfortable doing that. So again, that's one of those gray areas. Cannot be to someone of poor character. So they're going to ask questions about any troubles you've had with the law. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not eligible for SBA. But there are certain questions that you have to answer. Have you been charged with a felony, charged or convicted? Questions like that. Now, just because you answer yes does not mean you're not eligible. However, there are two things that come into play. It either has to be remote in time or minor in nature. So you have to be truthful on the form when you check the box. If it were a long time ago, okay, that you may still be eligible. If it were minor in nature, you may, if it's a misdemeanor or something like that, okay, it's probably not a problem. But those two things come into play as far as character. And again, you cannot have defaulted on any government lending. That would make you ineligible. With the only thing being if you were delinquent on taxes, but you have an official payment plan in place and you have been actively paying on that. So you can't say, well, if you give me the loan, then I'll set it up. Or I've had it for 2 months. That won't qualify. Something preferably that you've had in place and been actively paying on time for 12 months, then you may be eligible.
Okay. Would an apartment building be considered a passive investment?
Absolutely, because it has to be something that the business is going to occupy. So anything residential would not qualify. It has to be commercial.
Okay. All right. Another question. So
now, Jerome, real quick, Mike, I want to ask Jerome. Yes. Jerome, SBA can do like a Airbnb, correct? Where it's like a 30-day or less option.
Yes, because they're going to look at that as a hotel. However, there are so many things that the lender has to check off just to make sure that it does meet that, because they don't want it to be speculative. They don't want it to be anything residential. Another kind of gray area, there may be a mixed use building in which a business will occupy some of it, but then there are residential units that are a part of it as well. So that may be eligible if the business occupies 51%, but any money cannot go towards those residential units. So if if the building needs remodeling or renovation, none of the money can go towards those residential units other than bringing it up to code, which would fall under the entire building. If there's electrical or plumbing that's involved that needs to be brought up to code, you can use it for that, but that's it. So, and again, these are gray areas that the lender fleshes out when they get the inspection of the property and the appraisal.
Yeah, Amber just asked how the majority of Airbnbs are residential. That's correct, but they're business. It's a business as an Airbnb. So I do know we can do Airbnbs through SBA. So, but
they are eligible.
An apartment complex is considered residential because people are living in that space for longer than 30 days. I don't know where I have seen that, read that, or whatever 30-day rule, but
you are correct. You are correct. They're going to look at an Airbnb as a hotel, very short-term stays. Business. Again, they're not the easiest thing to do. And if you go back 10 years, you probably couldn't find anybody who would do an SBA loan for that. But they're a lot more commonplace now. So again, the burden of proof falls on the borrower and the lender that's doing that.
Yeah.
So if we find out that, someone got a SBA loan for Airbnb and they're living in the property all the time,
right.
That's a problem.
So, Jerome, I think you had predicted this question would come up. We have a question about SBA forgiveness of Eidl loans because they are very similar to the Paycheck Protection Program loans.
Absolutely not. The PPP loans are the only forgivable loan. Now, the Eidl economic injury disaster loans did have what's called an advance, which was a grant. So that does not have to be repaid. But if it's a loan, and you'll know it's a loan because you actually signed loan documents for 3.75% for 30 years, that is a loan. The EIDL is not forgivable. We haven't heard any chatter about them changing that rule.
I can just remember, and I understand where the question is coming from. I remember in the early days of the pandemic and the shutdowns, I think that month the economy, the gross domestic product dropped by about a third. And everybody was thinking, oh my gosh, this may not be a recession. It may be a depression. And At that point, the PPP program wasn't out yet. I believe the EIDL was out. And so that was where people went first. And then Congress, to Congress's credit, they did create the Paycheck Protection Program. But if you were early on to get the EIDL loans, you really might have been kicking yourself a little bit because you could have gotten the forgivable version. And that's just the way things work. And I understand why people are asking for it. Who could have predicted what we went through? And now the fact that we're growing so fast that we can't find people and inflation's so high. It's crazy times. We have another question. Does ECDI work with FSA or ag on aquaculture loans?
Yeah, so I saw that. I believe that's Kenneth. Kenneth, I obviously have a lot of experience working with that industry specifically because my previous employer was where the state aquaculture facility is housed at OSU South Centers there in Piketon. And I get it. That's an industry that several folks are trying to get into. 4.5 months in for me, I will tell you this: it was one of the things that I chatted with our CEO and president when before I came on, that I would love to implement some agricultural type lending. So we haven't done any to my knowledge, but the hope is down the road. That's the best answer I can give.
And I have no experience with that. I would probably look at USDA first. They're kind of our cousin in the lending world. I'd probably reach out to them first. Randy Monhemuth is someone who works there, and Mike Rutherford are two names that come to mind for USDA.
Yeah, and he mentioned in his question working with FSA, Farm Service Agency. It would be kind of the same deal. Would we work with them? Do we work with them? So just some segues that relationships that I have to make and try to get that done.
Well, gentlemen, I think we may have time for one more question. And I'll just say that you two have been excellent panelists, great deal of knowledge and experience between the two of you. So, and very to the point and honest answers. So appreciate that very much. I think one last question. What about individuals who may have less than perfect credit? What options are out there? What kind of programs might you have or advice might you have?
When I get those, I refer to ECDI first. But I always include the caveat that doesn't mean your credit doesn't matter. But ECDI, and I'll let Chris expound upon this, but at least they will listen to the reasoning. A commercial bank, if you've got a 610 credit score, they don't care what the reason is for the 610 credit score, and they don't care if Warren Buffett did your business plan. It's a hard no. Yeah. At least at ECDI, at least when I was there, I could listen to the why, but the why had to match your credit bureau. Your credit bureau report tells a story. If you say, well, I have a low credit score because I got sick, last year, and that's why I wasn't able to pay my bills. But if I look at your credit bureau report, I say, well, you've been late since 2016. And so you got sick last year. It doesn't explain everything else. But so, Chris.
So Jerome, I appreciate that, and all I can say is, that's our niche. That's why we are who we are. I'm not certain what our current average credit rating is that of our clientele base. I will tell you this: we will entertain currently 590 and above. Again, other things come into play. You've got to be strong elsewhere. You've got to have documentation on why you're at 590. Just like Jerome said, we look at the whole picture. But but do we make loans to folks that have adverse credit? Absolutely, every day. So, like I've said a couple times, come and see us, try us out, and we'll hopefully, be able to work together. If nothing else, we'll help counsel you through our WBCs on getting that credit to a level that we can work with you. So,
That's great information, gentlemen. And I will just say that Jerome's contact information, Chris's contact information are both in chat. And then Jack Lee Harris is the contact for Appalachian Growth Capital. My contact information is in there. Thank you very much, Jerome and Chris, for your time. Really, from a lending environment, I think there's more options now than ever before. And we've got some pretty aggressive groups out there trying to reach folks who have struggled in the past to get access to capital. So thank you for everything you do. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yep.
See
All right, you guys, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.